Nearly 3 days after the shooting death of a homeowner, the Fort Worth Police Department has released few details about what happened. Police say officers Richard Hepner and Benjamin Hanlon, both rookies, responded to a residential burglar alarm in the 400 block of Havenwood Lane. That's when they came upon a man with a gun. 72-year-old Jerry Waller was shot to death in his own garage, not where the alarm call came from. Tensions still high in that neighborhood.
Our officers were dispatched to a residential burglary alarm call. And for reasons that we don't know right now, the officers ended up at the house across the street. The homeowner was armed with a handgun, and officers feared for their lives, and they shot the homeowner.
We were deeply troubled by the police department misrepresenting details of the incident in their interviews with the media. My father heard noise behind the house, and he went to investigate. He picked up his gun for protection. While no one in the family was present at the instant of his death, his body was witnessed immediately after, inside his own garage. We were disturbed by suggestions that the police may have felt threatened by a man in his own garage, faced with unknown trespassers wielding flashlights.
Now, we did ask the police department for comment today. They declined. We also called Officer Hepner's attorney and have not heard back.
Pete Schulte is a defense attorney now, former police officer back in the day, so you know both sides of this. You know how it might be prosecuted or defended, and you also know what police officers deal with every day on the job, and it's a dangerous job. First, I want to talk about Fort Worth Star-Telegram today. Opinion editorial said essentially Fort Worth police has got to do a better job of getting answers out quickly because the public is getting antsy, I guess. What do you think about that? You are now in the media a lot. How's Fort Worth doing? You know,
I was a spokesman for the McKinney Police Department several years ago. When we take that training, when you have officer-involved shootings.
Because it just doesn't feel like enough is coming out.
And I think that's by design, because when there's an adrenaline situation like that with officers, there's going to be a lot of information that's going to trickle out over the 48 hours following the shooting event. So we may start to get more information from Fort Worth Police as these days go by now.
But wouldn't you think if they established early on that he pointed his gun at me? That's something you just get right out, don't you?
Well, I don't think so. I think what they're going to say is they're going to put it all together. I mean, I think the biggest thing they're trying to do right now is set up the timeline.
Okay.
What exactly happened? Did they go check out the first house first, look to the right, and saw a man with a gun at 1 a.m. in the morning? We don't know that yet.
Let's talk about some of the other things. 2 rookies on the job about 7 months. I've talked to some police officers, and they say that is about the time you do start riding alone. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say these guys, we use the term cut loose from field training. I would say they were probably about a month or two out of their field training program, which is normal.
But there's nothing more important and that experience plays more into than this type of scenario.
That's correct. And I will tell you, burglar alarm calls happen all the time. They're probably one of the most responded to calls for police officers. And I would say generally most officers are not going to encounter something like this in their careers.
Well, let's talk. There's a picture. We've put this on TV several times. Let me show you this. This is the one taken by the neighbor. So we have the garage. We have officers. We have cones. And under those cones are usually shell casings. Correct?
Yes.
To the left, we've blurred the screen. That's where the homeowner is lying dead. Okay?
Correct.
So this proximity is going to tell a lot. And I know, and I've dealt with it, it seems like this is too close. These officers, if that's where they shot from, they were without cover, right? And
yeah.
You don't want to be without cover.
That's correct. I mean, I think the situation that occurred here is it was 1 in the morning. It was dark. Mr. Waller probably heard somebody walking up with flashlights, probably couldn't tell they were the police. And same thing for the police officers. All they saw was a man with a gun. They had no idea. It was just an innocent homeowner who was trying to protect somebody else's house. And I think this is one of those situations where both parties could have done more to prevent what happened.
A key thing here is if you're walking around somebody's house, there are a lot of armed people everywhere now.
Correct.
You want to be saying, if you're the police, you want to be saying, police, Fort Worth Police, right? I mean, you want to be announcing that, and I don't know, do you think they were announcing? Do you think they were telling who they were?
You know, obviously there's still a lot of the facts that we don't know yet, but based on, you know, what we've been hearing from Mr. Waller's family, I would have a, belief that they weren't saying, police, drop your gun, police, drop your gun. I think we do know that they were yelling, drop your gun, drop your gun, drop your gun. But if Mr. Waller couldn't tell they were police officers, it could have been what he perceived was a suspect telling him to drop his gun. And vice versa. The police were telling him to drop a gun. They didn't know who he was. He could have been a burglary suspect. So this is one of those examples, I think, where the two good guys thought each other were bad guys. And that's what this resulted in.
And sometimes undercover police officers rushing to the scene get shot. So we know this happens. But do you have any doubt that this will be ruled justifiable? A guy with a gun, bottom line, a man with a gun was shot by police officers any doubt it'll be justified?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because under these circumstances, when officer-involved shootings are investigated, and under the law, it's analyzed of what was known to the officers at the time the force was used. There's no way they were going to know at the time that they fired these shots that Mr. Waller was a 72-year-old family man who had no intention of harming them. And that's what they're going to analyze. It is a tragic situation, don't get me wrong, but I think the officers are, they're going to be cleared on this based on what they knew at the time.
But everything we know about Mr. Waller is law-abiding citizen, support of the police, has a handgun for his own protection, probably gets out and shoots and knows what he's doing. I'm not saying he's exactly like Pete Schulte, but he's a guy like Pete Schulte, not a bad guy. And so if Pete Schulte ends up shot dead in his garage and police shot him, something went way bad, and maybe some changes in training, or what's going to happen?
I would say that I think they're going to, any police department, I know Chief Halstead will look at this, and if he believes that there is a training issue by the police not clearly identifying themselves, I think when I was an officer, if I show up at a scene in a fully marked squad car, I believe that people are just automatically going to believe that I'm a cop. I just believe that. And sometimes when it's dark,
but the car was parked out front, the
correct,
garage is around the side.
But when you're a rookie, sometimes when you see that threat, and you sometimes don't remember that you've got to announce who you are. And it's a tragic
navy
situation.
Blue uniform.
Dark.
The spokesperson saying, squad car, full uniform. It's black or navy, and the squad car is around the corner. That doesn't help a guy. Right?
I agree. And like I said, I'm not trying to say this should be a lesson for homeowners, but, if this was me, and I was a cop for a long time, if I heard a burglar alarm, I'm going to lock my doors and call the police and look out the window. I don't ever suggest that a homeowner, even especially if it's not your house, going outside of your house at 1 in the morning in the middle of the night with a gun, especially if you hear a burglar alarm, because usually the police are not far behind.
Got it. One last question. We've got to wrap this up. Any doubt they went to the wrong house, and how does that happen?
I don't think so. I think they arrived on scene, and I think they were checking the area, and I think they looked to the right, and they saw a man in an open garage with a gun, and I think their direction attached towards there, because they didn't know if the person had been in that house and then traveled across the street to the other house. I think they were just investigating what they thought was a man with a gun.
How long do you think it'll take? When are we going to hear something? Got to be. I think public outcry wants something.
I agree. I think we'll get some more information by the end of this week, but I think the full investigation will take several weeks to complete.
All right, Pete, thank you very much.
Absolutely.